Hi everybody, it's Dr. Chabot, and in this video we're going to look at how we can apply Gauss's law not just to spheres but also to cylindrical symmetry. So here I have an infinitely long cylinder, radius r. Let's give it a uniform charge density. So we're going to say that it has a uniform charge density, and it's going to be a volume charge density. So this is a solid long cylinder. And we want to find the electric field everywhere. So we want to find the electric field both inside r less than r and r greater than r. So I'm going to start with looking at Gauss's law. And we'll do it, if we look at Gauss's law, integral over a closed surface, E dot dA, so the flux through a closed surface is equal to the net charge enclosed over epsilon naught. So let's go ahead and look at the situation to start where r is less than r. So I'm going to copy this figure and paste it down here and keep it the same large size. And now we have to think about what our Gaussian surface will be. So for r less than r and cylindrical symmetry, I don't want to draw a sphere and then try to imagine the flux through that sphere because it's not going to be uniform at all, right? So what we're going to do instead is use, quite obviously, hopefully, a cylinder to match this symmetry. So my Gaussian surface is a different cylinder, kind of like with spheres. We had the actual object, the spherical object, and then we have the imaginary Gaussian surface. Same thing here. I now have this imaginary Gaussian surface. And a difference here is that I now have to assign it some length. It has to be finite, right? With spheres, you just had one parameter, which was the radius r. Here, it does have to have some length L. And you might be like, well, I'm not given L in the problem. But don't worry about it, because when we start thinking about the flux through this, that's going to depend on L, how many field lines are going through it. But then when we start thinking about the flux in terms of the charge enclosed, that's also going to depend on L. So L is going to go away in this scenario. So this is my imaginary Gaussian surface. So this is going to be a Gaussian surface. It's going to have a radius of little r. And the reason that I drew it inside is because I'm specifically looking for r less than, little r less than big R. So I'm drawing the Gaussian surface inside on purpose. I'm going to give it a length L. And again, I'm not worrying about the fact that L is not allowed in my answer. Okay, so now I have a Gaussian surface that's going to hopefully match my symmetry. Let's do the step where we look at, and this is similar to one of the problems we did when we talked about flux. If we look at the dA at each part of this surface, then, you know, it's this curved surface, and the dA at any given point is going to come out perpendicular from that surface. And so on the end cap, right, my dA might look something like this. And then I want to visualize my electric field. And the electric field, because I have this long cylindrical symmetry, the electric field is going to point away from the center axis of this charge distribution at all points. So even over here on the end cap, my electric field is going to still be pointing radially away, right? So this is making an electric field that is pointing away radially from that object. So if we start to then talk about E dot dA, the left-hand side, integral E dot dA, I want to divide this up into the integral of E dot dA for the curved portion of the cylinder, the kind of roundy outside, plus the integral of E dot dA for the flat end caps. Because we can see that there's a different angle between those in each of these scenarios. So then that's going to become the integral, and I can see for the curved surfaces, E and dA are parallel, and E everywhere is going to be constant on that. So I can say that first I'll write this as E dA and then cosine of 0, which cosine of 0 is just going to be equal to 1, and that's for my curved surface. And that's since E is parallel to dA on those surfaces. And then plus E dA cosine of 90 for my flat end caps. And so the flat end caps are going to have the electric field perpendicular to dA, so that's where the cosine of 90 comes in. So that makes this entire turn to 0. So this here on the second thing, right, this has no flux through the end caps. Okay, so then also, as I said, now we're only worrying about the curved portion because there's just no flux through those end caps. The curved portion, the electric field is constant everywhere, so I could write this as E dA for my curved portion. So I'm adding up all the dAs on my curved portion. And I could do that since E is a constant on a given Gaussian surface, curved area. So on the curved area of a Gaussian surface. So that's why I could pull E out of the integral. And so then what I can do is say that this is then going to be equal to E times the area of the curved surface, the area of the curved part of the Gaussian surface, which is simply going to be equal to, and then the surface area of that curved portion is going to be equal to 2 pi r times L. So this is my left-hand side of Gauss's law. And what we'll see is that's the left-hand side, whether or not I'm inside or outside the object, because again, we're just talking about the flux lines through this. So this is an important result for the left-hand side of Gauss's law in cylindrical symmetry. Okay, so that's my left-hand side. And so now I want to do my right-hand side. And so the right-hand side over here, if I look at the right-hand side, is going to be the Q enclosed over epsilon naught. So here's where I do a similar thing to spheres, where I have to look at my my symmetry in order to figure out, not my symmetry, my geometry in order to figure out how much Q is enclosed. So I can still say that Q enclosed is going to be equal to rho times my volume enclosing a charge. So the amount of the volume I have that's enclosing a charge. And so this is now going to be equal to my Q total over my volume total, which actually it gives me rho in the problem, so I don't need to do that. And in this case, because if it's an infinite cylinder, we could never really be given a fixed Q because it's an infinitely long thing. So we're always going to be given some density function here. So we need to use density because it's infinite. So we can't really talk about a total charge or a total volume. And so we were given density in this problem, and so we could just write this as rho times the volume of that Gaussian cylinder that's enclosing the charge. So to, to kind of shade in where there's charge enclosed inside that Gaussian cylinder. So that then gives me, if we look at that volume, a volume of a cylinder is pi r squared, the area of the end cap, times the length. And so we can see that the length shows up on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side. So it shows up in both places. So now we're ready to put it together. We say the left-hand side equals the right-hand side, and so we end up with E times 2 pi little r, the Gaussian surface r, times L equals rho times pi little r squared L, and it was little r squared because I just have a partial volume, all over epsilon naught. I can go ahead and solve this for E. And I get that E is going to be equal to rho, and my pi's cancel. One of my r's goes away, so I have rho times L. My L's cancel as well. So let me just go ahead and do some of the math to show my pi's and my L's cancel, and then one of my r squareds cancel. So I end up with rho times r over 2 epsilon naught. So this goes linearly as r inside. As I'm enclosing more and more charge, I'm getting more and more electric field as it's growing. Okay, so now let's do the other case of r greater than r. So now we're going to be outside the entire cylinder. So I'm going to go to my top picture and just copy it again. So here I can copy and then paste. And then now I'm going to paste it a little bit smaller, because in order to do this one, I want to picture my Gaussian cylinder here. And it doesn't really matter how long you make your Gaussian cylinder, but it does have to have a finite length. It cannot be infinite. And so in this scenario, my dAs on this Gaussian cylinder are still pointing perpendicular to the cylinder at all points. So my dAs point out like so, and I still have my electric field parallel on the curved portions, but then perpendicular on the end caps. So here we have the same left-hand side for the exact same reasons as before. So we have that same exact discussion about how E is parallel to dA only on the curved portion. E is uniform along that surface. And then the area of the curved portion is 2 pi r times L. So E is equal to E times 2, the left-hand side is equal to E times 2 pi little r L. So that's going to be the same left-hand side. For the right-hand side, my Q enclosed, well, now when I look at what's enclosed, right, I'm not enclosing charge all the way out to the Gaussian cylinder. I'm only enclosing charge in that shaded region. So Q enclosed over epsilon naught is going to be equal to 1 over epsilon naught times rho times the volume enclosing charge. You can think about that as the amount of volume that I shaded in, right? This is the volume enclosing charge. It's not the total volume of the Gaussian surface. Instead, it's the volume that has of the enclosed amount that has charge. And so in this case, that's going to be pi capital R squared, because that's going to be the area here for this end cap for that part enclosing charge. Times the length of my Gaussian cylinder. So that's going to be my Q enclosed has that volume of the entire cylinder, but it doesn't have little r because I don't have charge all the way out to my Gaussian cylinder. So now I'm going to put this together and I can say left-hand side equals right-hand side. I get E times 2 pi little rl equals rho over epsilon naught pi capital R squared L. I can do the same thing I did prior, where I mark what's going to cancel. So my pi's and my L's now go away, and I end up with rho times capital R squared over 2 epsilon naught times 1 over R. So this goes as 1 over R outside of this, and so 1 over R outside. And so it actually then, even outside, if we remember from our previous results from just using KQ over R squared to calculate this, for a line of charge, that the solid cylinder looks like an infinite line of charge. So it looks like a line of charge when we're outside of it. This is hopefully not too surprising of a result, because remember that a sphere, a solid sphere of charge, looked like a point charge when we were outside of it. So a solid cylinder of charge is going to just look like a line of charge when we are outside of it. So my electric field as a function of R is going to go increase with R on the inside, and then it's going to drop off as 1 over R when we start to move to the outside of it. Okay, so hopefully this is another key geometry that we do for Gauss's law, and hopefully you can see that when we went to reduce the left-hand side, that we made these same arguments about how does E line up with dA. We saw that it was only on the curved portion, and so we could neglect the end caps, and that the Q enclosed was still done from some of these geometry pictures that we did with spheres.